Hi, I am Zachary Divelbiss. I am a licensed attorney here in Phoenix, Arizona. If you are watching this video, continue. This is going to be a great video. The purpose of this video is whether or not you have to allow a police officer into your home. Very, very important video. Very excited to get into it. If you want to hire us to represent you because something we said in this video or something that you like about our firm, please go to our website. Please give us a call. More than happy to accept you as a client. If you find this video useful, helpful for you, please like, share, subscribe, so on and so forth. Now, I want to get into it. This is a slide that we've created talking about our home searches. We've made another video about this already. So if you haven't already, please watch the first video that talks about whether a warrant is valid or not. I'm going to go through our summary here again real quick. We have the greatest amount of protection from unreasonable searches and seizures in our home. This is because we have the greatest expectation of privacy in our homes. The Fourth Amendment protects your person, your home, your belongings from unreasonable searches and seizures by requiring law enforcement officers to obtain warrants that are based on probable cause and specifically describe the places to be searched and the items to be seized. If a law enforcement officer obtains evidence illegally, thus in violation of the Fourth Amendment, then the exclusionary rule will prevent that evidence from being used against you, the defendant, in court unless the circumstances surrounding the search and seizure fall within one of our many exceptions to the warrant requirement and the exclusionary rule. We've created this chart. It's going to go through, show a bunch of different things, but hopefully answer maybe a lot of questions that you have. The charts that I go through are not all inclusive. You can't just look at this chart and say this is the law of the end. This is why you go to law school. This is why you hire lawyers to help you. Real briefly, I'm going to show you. This was the previous one that we went through. How do you know if a warrant is valid, a legal warrant under the Fourth Amendment? And then today what we're going to focus on is an officer's at my door. Can the officer enter my home? Very, very, very important section here that I can't state it enough. This is as important as Miranda, as important whether you should pull over. The police are at my door. What do I do? The true answer right from the very beginning is you say, show me a warrant. You crack the door open just enough. You say, show me a warrant. If the police have a warrant, this is where we're starting. Okay. Does the officer have a legal warrant to search your home? This is very important. This slide, this template, this handout is very helpful. One, for you as the general person watching this, whether it's about your case, someone else's case, but also for the lawyer side. And I don't want to convolute this. What I want to share here, though, is you as somebody at your own home, you don't get to decide whether it is a legal warrant, okay? You don't get to decide that. The lawyers get to decide that in court, down the road, later on. But if the police have a warrant, period, then the police officer can enter your home, search within the home, look within the home or whatever's specifically labeled in this search warrant, and then they can, which there's some limitations on it, so please refer to the other video going into that, but ultimately their police are allowed to search your home, look at the places that are in the search warrant, and look for the items that are supposed to be seized if the police have a warrant. If they do not have a warrant, the police are not allowed into your home. They cannot just come in to your home whatsoever. Asterisk. The whatsoever is what we're going to talk about. This is what the main focus is for today. If one of these exceptions apply, then the police are allowed to enter your home. Okay. Once again, this list really isn't 100%, every single situation. This is all the big ones. This is what we learned in law school. This is what is heavily debated still to this day. The minutia, the little pieces of what really counts, what doesn't count. I'm not going to get into a ton of the examples, but this will give you a good understanding. So the police do not have a warrant. Can they still get into my house if someone gave them valid consent to search the house, to enter the home? Yes, the police are going to be allowed into the house if someone gave valid consent. So what is that? If a person had the apparent authority to give the consent, then this is an exception to the warrant requirement. Thus, anything they find within the house that's illegal will be used against you. It's evidence. This is the big key word here, apparent authority. This is what we study in law school. This is what your lawyers will tell you about even right now. This apparent authority doctrine is very loose, it's vague. So as long as the police believe that the person answering that door, the person, right outside the house, whatever, belonged to that house, lived at the house, had some sort of authority over anything within that house, and that person says, yeah, officer, please go ahead and on in, then great, the police are allowed to. Even if, let's say that person didn't officially live there, let's say if they were just renting one of the rooms and the police searched the rest of the house, too bad, too sad, the police are allowed in. So very important, especially if you live with roommates, you got to educate them. You got to tell them, hey, if the police show up and they don't have a warrant, the answer is no. They are not allowed in the house. The big ticket item here is the police will say this, may I enter your house? If the police have to ask permission for something, it usually means they're not allowed in. So that's the big ticket item. Continuing on, let's see here. Is the officer conducting a legally administrative search? So this one, very rare that this happens, but it does happen. It is a valid reason the police are allowed to enter your home. This is what we're talking about for inspecting building codes, fire regulations, city ordinances, home business regulations, and other local ordinances. Like I said, a little more on the rare end, but yes, if the police are there to do this function, then they are allowed into the house. And guess what? If they find drugs laying out, if they find weapons you're not allowed to be in possession of, if they see domestic abuse, domestic violence happening, all these things that are taking place, that's going to be used against you. So, very important. If the police are there for those reasons, you got to let them in, hide all your drugs. Don't let them be out. If they don't have it, now we get into if they don't have one of these two reasons, they don't have the consent to be there, and they don't have, let's say, another valid legal reason to enter the home, then we move on to what are called exigent circumstances. This is a legal term. Exigent basically means urgency, importance, an emergency, immediate. So those are some common terms that we're going to see here going into it. So is there an emergency taking place? Yes. If there is an emergency, then that is an exigent circumstance and the police may enter. Guess what? They find drugs in an emergency, you're busted with them. So very important there, emergency, loose term, not going to define it. Doesn't really happen that often anyways, but absolutely could. You can't kick the police out if there's an emergency. Continuing on, we go to the second part of this page. Is the officer in hot pursuit of a fleeing suspect? Okay, is the officer in hot pursuit? Hot pursuit's our key word here. That's why it's bolded in blue here. Very important. If that is true, then yes, the police are allowed to enter your home and the evidence is allowed to be used against you that the police found. Okay, I'm not going to get super deep into the hot pursuit here. Suffice it to say, it's usually more than, let's say, a DUI suspect and the DUI person hurries up, parks in his front yard, and then runs into their house and locks the door. Usually it does not count as a hot pursuit. Okay, usually we're talking more about felony level, we're talking about shootings, we're talking about kidnappings, we're talking about, major drug deals. That's usually the level we're talking about, although this exception, if the prosecutor really wanted to, if the police say busted down your door without a warrant because you were suspected of a DUI, this is the argument the prosecutor would say. The prosecutor would say, hey, look, we found all those drugs chasing a DUI suspect in his house, and he was in hot pursuit of a fleeing suspect. Like I said, not too common on the DUI end, but that's probably what you're thinking. And in essence, yes, your home kind of counts as home base. If the moment you make it in there, you lock the door and you don't answer the door, the police need to go and get a warrant for them to validly come into your home. Okay. Continuing on. Is the police officer in the process of a rescue or rendering emergency aid? This is a very important exception. This one does kind of actually happen more frequently than you would think. If it is true, if the officer is trying to rescue someone, if the officer is rendering emergency aid, then they are going to be allowed into your home without a warrant, without anyone's consent to do this. Sometimes this is called welfare checks, where the neighbor calls and they say, hey, my neighbors are arguing. The police show up at the door and the police can hear violence. They can hear, potential weapons, and they need to get in and rescue someone, or they hear someone saying, I've been shot. They're going to knock that door down. They're going to enter in order to render that emergency aid. Kind of a loose term here, but usually we all get the picture, a little bit of an officer's discretion as to what they believed was happening within the home. So that's what you're going to see here. The next one. Are there valid concerns about a potential escape of a suspect? This does kind of fall in line with the DUI example I was giving earlier. Once again, this is more for the higher level felony cases. Is it possible that if they don't enter this home, this person will be able to flee? Okay, this is what you commonly will see as depicted in movies with police chases. Your Jason Bournes, where they're running through different people's apartments and houses in the middle of the city. Well, the police aren't going to have to stop at every single one of those houses, knock, hey, do you live here? Do I have permission to enter? No, they're going to run and they're going to chase and they're going to follow that suspect. They're going to go through house by house by house, everything that the suspect just did, in order to prevent that person from entering that home and then escaping through a back door. Okay, so this is very important. The suspect is not entering the home and staying, because if they enter the home and stay there, this is not the exception that applies, because they're not escaping anywhere else. So if there is a potential escape here, then yes, the police are going to be allowed in. Unfortunately, if they find evidence that is incriminating within your house, even if it didn't have anything to do with this person breaking in, probably a problem you're going to be facing there. So don't leave things laying around is the bottom line with this one. All right, is there a danger to the officer or others? Okay, this one is similar to the emergency exception, but is there danger to the officer or others? This is the classic, tidal waves coming, they need to take shelter and hide. Not a very common one. There's usually not danger that requires the police to enter the home. This could be, like I said, the distinctions are so minuscule, whether it's the emergency versus a danger. This would be all of a sudden a shootout breaks in the middle of the street. They got to get into the house to protect themselves, the police officer, and maybe other people. So anyways, if there is a danger, then yes, the officer is allowed to enter your house. If theoretically they find something that you shouldn't have there, then yes, that evidence could be used against you. Okay. Continuing on, the last exception that we have listed here is there a valid concern about the destruction or removal of evidence? This is a very important one. This one definitely does come up a little more than some of the other ones that we've listed here. And there's a lot that we learn about in law school about this. What counts as destruction or removal of evidence? How did they know that something was going to be destroyed or removed of evidence? So this is the classic example where, the police witness through an open window. They see drugs on the table and they say, wow, we know there's a drug dealer in this house. The police knock because they haven't had time to go and get a warrant to enter the house. They definitely don't get permission. And let's just say the police kick down the door right there and they say, hey, look, we had to knock down the door. We couldn't wait for a warrant. There's no other exception that applied, but we knew that there were drugs in there and we had to make sure that they didn't destroy those drugs and remove that evidence. Well, that doesn't count. The courts have said, no, that doesn't count. The officer didn't have a valid concern. There was nothing that told this officer that this person in the house was going to go and destroy those. Let's give it a little bit of a different scenario here. Let's say the officer knocks on the door, says, hey, we're the police. The person behind the door says, oh, hold on, officer. I've got to go flush all these drugs. Now the officer has a little more reason to say, whoa, there's definitely a reason this person's about to go and destroy these drugs. A little more of a reason still. One of the debatable parts of what we as lawyers and the prosecutors will debate on whether destruction of evidence, especially drug evidence, is enough to beat a warrant, and the warrant requirement. This person probably still deserves the privacy at their home. There's still probably enough time for the police to go and get a warrant, depending on what's going on. And sometimes the judges rule in the defense's favor, and they say, no, you guys can't use that exception, but sometimes we lose. And they say, yeah, the police had a valid reason to think that the evidence was going to be destroyed in there. Anyways, if there's the destruction or the removal of the evidence potentially happening, then yes, the police will be allowed to enter into the home without a warrant, without anyone's permission, and what they find will be used against you. Okay, if none of these things happened, then it was not an exigent circumstance. There was no emergency. There was no higher level important reason to allow the police into your home. So we ultimately answer the question here of, if the police are at your house, can that officer enter your home? Yes, if they have a warrant. If they have a warrant, they're going to enter. If not, let's look at some of our exceptions. Did somebody give them consent to enter? Then yes. If not, were the police there for a other legal reason? If so, then yes. If not, then we got to go to our exigent circumstances. We got an emergency, then yes, the police are allowed in. We have over here hot pursuit, then the police are allowed in. We have rescue or rendering aid, then yes, the police are allowed in. We have potential escape, then yes, the police are allowed in. If we have a danger, the police are allowed in. If we have destruction or removal of evidence, then the police are allowed in. That is it. If none of those exceptions apply, then the police are not allowed in. Your responsibility as the individual within the home is to never give consent, is to always say no, come back with a warrant, I don't see a warrant, leave, leave, leave. If the police do come into your home, it is not your responsibility at that point to let them know, hey, I watched a YouTube video or I saw something on Facebook that said, hey, this isn't an exigent circumstance. Your responsibility at that point is to shut your mouth and ask for a lawyer in the opposite order. You say, I want a lawyer, you're here in my house, and I don't want to answer any further questions. And then you remain silent, you say nothing else. You let the police do whatever they need to do. You let them find whatever you want. Leave it to us, the lawyers, to get that evidence thrown out of court because one of these exceptions did not apply. Okay, that's your responsibility. That's the big ticket items you should know. There are some other details that I'm not truly going to get into on this as to, what point you need to see the warrant, how many copies you get, legible copies, all that's a different argument for another day. Suffice it to say, these are the exceptions to the warrant requirement. This is what does or does not allow the police to enter your home. A lot of information here. If any of this has helped you, please, like I said, like, subscribe, send it to a friend, give us a call, go to our website, let us know if you're facing any of this and you want to hire us. We're more than happy to help as we represent people all the time here in Phoenix and Maricopa County in Arizona, and would love to help you too.